Well, turning back to ISIS now, some numbers on the ISIS money trail with the word the terror group's budget for this year is $2 billion, which reportedly includes a $250 million surplus. Of course, there's a lot who take issue with those numbers. According to the Pentagon, the group is no longer getting the bulk of its cash from oil revenue. They're turning to the black market instead, to smuggling operations, with our next guest saying ISIS is, quote, selling anything they can get their hands on. David Gartenstein-Ross is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he joins us now. So, David, where is ISIS getting its money?
It's getting its money from a number of things. You alluded to a couple of them. Oil sales, although it's lost a lot of its refining capability because the U.S. bombed it, it also is getting less money from oil because the oil market has collapsed. Second thing, it's imposing taxation upon its population. That is, extorting money basically from areas that it controls. Third thing is it's getting increasingly into the antiquities market. It's been selling both antiquities that exist in areas that it comes to control and also has been selling property of people who fled. For example, the Christians of Mosul have had their property stolen at market or sold at market. So these are all various ways that the group has been getting money. But it's clear that I think that their figure of their surplus should not be taken seriously.
I was going to ask you that, David. Do they have a bank? I mean, where are they getting that $2 billion number? Is there an ATM? I mean, what should we make of those numbers that they're putting out?
Well, I mean, they do have a treasury, but let's be very clear. There are no accountants coming in to perform outside audits to show that this is a credible figure in any way, shape, or form. This is ISIS claiming that it has a surplus. And one thing that this organization tends to do is to try to take areas of weakness and instead portray them as strengths. And so when they portray their financial state as being a strength of the organization, we should question that, especially because we know that the economy has absolutely collapsed in places that it controls, such as Mosul, where the price of food, the price of meat has shot through the roof.
Do you think that could be part of their undoing eventually, David? We've heard from the president, for example, that we should make ISIS more than it is because they can't set up a functioning economy. How does that impact their ability to survive?
I think it's absolutely a part of what's going to cause the organization to unravel, although I think the unraveling, especially in Syria, is going to be very, very slow. The fact that they can't have a functioning economy, the fact that they're imposing a totalitarian kind of rule, which makes the population naturally chafe and is increasingly engendering local resistance. All of these are reasons that I think ISIS is in for some trouble. And another thing, I agree with the president that we shouldn't make ISIS out to be more than it is, but part of the reason why its influence is often exaggerated is the White House's own messaging campaign, which has been awful when it comes to dealing with jihadist organizations. Part of the reason people think ISIS is spreading like wildfire is because when ISIS makes claims about its expansion into countries where it's a marginal player, it's been picked up on in the media and it has not been combated effectively by the administration or the White House.
Interesting. So do you think we should be doubtful, for example, of ISIS's move inside Libya after seeing the video of the execution of these Coptic Christians? Do you think we should meet that with less awe, if you will, and more skepticism?
Yes. I mean, look, what they've done in Libya, both the execution of the Christians and also their terrorist attack in Tripoli, is horrendous. But starting late last year, ISIS began to portray themselves as being in control of an entire city in northern Libya, the major city of Derna. Now, we know definitively at this point that they do not actually control Derna. They recently did come to finally gain a geographic control over an area of Libya, a town of about 10,000 people, but that's also an indication that they weren't able to take Derna. So I think that showing that the organization isn't expanding as much as it portrays is, I think, an important part of disrupting its momentum.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say it, and it gives us something to think about, David. Just a quick final thought. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the spread of Islamic terrorism because we've talked about all the different groups, from ISIS to Al-Qaeda, Ansar al-Sharia, Boko Haram. We can take a look at all the maps. Can you just quickly give us a little perspective on that? Is that ballooning out of control in general? Should we be give it a little bit more pause? How does ISIS add up to those other groups that we've been talking about for so many years?
Jihadism is definitely in a growth period. There's no denying that, and that is a very troublesome thing. Entire areas are being overrun by Boko Haram, by other organizations. ISIS itself is one player among a number. I think that Al-Qaeda overall is much stronger in North Africa and basically everywhere in the world other than Iraq and Syria, where ISIS is the dominant military force. So I think that we need to understand that there is a larger landscape of jihadism. And one reason I think that's important is because ISIS is burning hot right now. It's committing many brutal acts, and they're going to come back to haunt the organization, whereas Al-Qaeda, which has, of course, carried out notorious attacks against America, is handling itself much more strategically and undertaking a subtle rebrand. I think we need to be aware of the full range of players.
It's interesting. So as we're so focused on ISIS, every segment we're doing is on ISIS. What are we not watching? And what are they doing? Something to think about, David, and, of course, something to talk about with you when you come back on again, as we always appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good joining you.